first, what is it with Labor and border protection policy in this country? John Howard fixed it. Kevin Rudd promised he wouldn't touch it, but he did. And we ended up with nearly 1,000 illegal boats, nearly 50,000 illegal arrivals by sea and well over 1,000 deaths. Tony Abbott then fixed it again. Labor promised it wouldn't touch it a second time. Yet here we are again tonight. Labor pulling down one of the three pillars of Operation Sovereign Borders, and the Department of Home Affairs is already issuing warnings to people smugglers. A highly predictable turn of events. But not even I thought Labor would be stupid enough to do what Rudd did, dismantling the policies that worked, but here we go again. This is Labor Deputy Leader Richard Marles, now Deputy Prime Minister, promising they wouldn't do what they've just done.
There is absolutely no change in terms of Australia's border settings under this government. We will maintain a strong border, which is the right thing to do.
On Friday, I brought you the news of the Albanese government's dumping of previous rules in relation to temporary protection visas. Slipped in by way of a ministerial power, so signed off by the minister's pen, not the Parliament. Immigration Minister Andrew Giles has now granted 19,000 people, all who came illegally by boat prior to the election of the Abbott government, full permanent residency, family reunion access rights, full access, of course, to Social Security, Medicare, the NDIS, and a pathway to citizenship. Remember, there were always three elements to Operation Sovereign Borders that successfully stopped the boats and ended the deaths at sea. First, turning boats around so that would-be illegal migrants never got near Australia. Second, offshore processing so that those who made it to Christmas Island never got to Australia. And third, temporary protection visas so that those that got to the mainland never became permanent residents. Those three elements, the three pillars of Operation Sovereign Borders, were even given to the new Labor government in a highly confidential briefing paper called the Incoming Minister's Brief, so it was crystal clear what was needed to stop the boats and keep them stopped. Here's the page that says it all. Page 55, now out publicly because of a Freedom of Information request. And it says that Operation Sovereign Borders worked because of the three pillars, and that the last one, the one related to temporary protection visas, was needed to deny illegal boat arrivals both a permanent residency in Australia and family reunion if it was to work. Yet the government got this warning from its border protection officials, and it still went ahead last Friday and started dismantling what had worked for over a decade now in stopping the people smuggler trade and the deaths at sea. The Prime Minister was pushed on this very point today by former Home Affairs Minister, so he knows what he's talking about, now Opposition Leader Peter Dutton.
Has the government received any warnings from agencies, officials, experts or foreign governments that this decision could lead to an increase in people smuggling arrivals?
This government will continue to be tough on borders without being weak on humanity. This only applies to people from 2013 or before. So what we have in terms of those people is that during the 9 years in which they were in office, the 9 years, not one of those people was sent back.
The member for Barker.
Not one. To Afghanistan or Iran. If they're arguing they should be sent back, and if only they'd have got a fourth term, they would have acted and sent them back, then they should stand up and argue that that's the case.
Mr Speaker, on relevance, the question went to whether the Prime Minister has received advice that this backflipping policy would result in more boats likely to come.
Order, resume your seats.
We were very clear before the election. Very clear.
The member for Deakin is warned.
Exactly what we told the Australian people we would do before the election, and we have a mandate for it.
Completely gutless. He didn't even answer the question from Dutton, did he? And we know, of course, from that incoming minister's brief that Labor was warned. Now, this is a Labor government that now thinks it's untouchable, that it can break any promise it likes, be it cutting your power bill or keeping the boats stopped, and there is no consequence. This is about a Prime Minister giving in to Labor's Green left flank to protect his own hide, rather than doing the right thing by our country, indeed the thousands of vulnerable people who might take to the sea for a new life or risk their life trying to get here.
I refer to the fact that this Prime Minister has spent decades as an activist seeking to change Labor policy on border protection, including campaigning against boat turnbacks, offshore processing and temporary protection visas. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that he's not received any advice that the government's watering down of Operation Sovereign Borders is likely to result in more people smuggling arrivals?
I can guarantee that we will implement the precise policy which we took to the election.
There will always be lots and lots of people around the world who'd make perfectly good Australians should they come here. But it's the government and the Australian people that must decide who comes here, not migrants self-selecting, with the Australian people having no say in it. The last thing any of us should want is this hellish trade in human misery to start up again. And we then have waves of migrants that we're seeing in Europe and across America's southern border back again at Australia's north.